Morning.
Hey.
Bright and early day today.
We had a very early day today.
Big day of good record finds on Record Store Day.
Yeah, the first one. So let's apologize. We intended to have an episode leading into this about our finalized picks, but hey, life happens. I got sick, still fighting a cold, so if you hear me hacking up a lung, I assure you I'm okay.
It's COVID negative too, for those of you
concerned. That's the fun thing about working in the hospital. You get any kind of sickness, you get a COVID swab.
Free of charge.
Free of charge. All right, so stick with us because we got some exciting things for you.
You gotta fight for your right to party.
Hey everybody, this is James Dorn coming to you from the Roadhouse as usual.
Hey.
With me is my partner in crime, the guy that has worn a raspberry beret better than any girl that Prince ever sang about. The man who would never let Mr. McGee talk any kind of sauce about him, Aaron Rohde.
What can I say? Raspberry is just my favorite color.
You wear it well. And we actually have my wife, Chelsea, sitting side with us because she came to Record Store Day with us.
Willingly,
absolutely.
Didn't look at the receipt though.
Nope, she was in the car. Yep. You may remember her from all the times where I was like, Chelsea, if you're listening, earmuffs.
Just about every episode.
Every episode, in fact. All right, so for those of you who listened to our last episode about the Antique Mall, we're going to talk about the reviews from the Antique Mall for the classic records that Aaron and I picked out for each other.
And thank you for sitting through that episode for those of you who did. I know it got a little lengthy at time, but that one took quite a bit of editing on our end, so we appreciate you.
And it was a good trial for us to see eventually progressing towards doing stuff with YouTube and so on when we get a little more comfortable with our video editing.
Yeah, it was a very fun day, that's for sure.
Yeah, yep. We recorded a regular episode, then we went and did that, so it was definitely a long day.
We might have recorded one episode a few times, but
yeah,
we don't have to talk about that.
Yeah, these things happen. So Aaron, you wanted to do a top 10 list because it's been a while since we've done a top 10 list.
So I was watching a YouTuber who does video games. His channel is called Beat 'em Ups. He was talking about his top 10.
Chelsea likes him.
He's got some interesting videos.
Him and Kim.
Yeah. He did a top 10 list of Nintendo Switch games if he had to condense his giant collection down into 10 games. So I thought, it'd be fun if, James and I had to pick, if we could only keep 10 records, if we had to get rid of the other 200, 330 of them or whatever. Which 10 would we keep?
It was like pulling teeth.
It kind of was. It definitely was.
All right. Well, you posed the question to me, so I will go off of my list first.
And I will say, we have shared each other's lists. We've shared our lists with each other. I knew James and I would have one album of these that would be the same. We won't tell you which one. You can guess which one.
Spoilers!
There are a couple that surprised me on James' list as well.
Yeah, well, when I say them, you can tell me why they surprised you. The first one, and again, we're not going to go into explanations necessarily about why these albums are important to us. These are just some of our favorites. First one I'm going to talk about is T-Rex Electric Warrior. I will say Motley Crue, Shout at the Devil. Dusty Springfield's Dusty in Memphis. Of course, the expanded deluxe edition. Delaney and Bonnie and Friends on tour. It is worth a note that album also features Eric Clapton. The Darkness, Permission to Land. Dan Auerbach, Waiting on a Song. Boston.
So this is one that really kind of surprised me.
Why is that?
That you had it on there. And to me, it's classic rock for people who are close to my age. And, I was listening to Bon Jovi last night, and I sent James a picture of it. And I said, it's a classic rock night. And you made the comment, no, that's 80s. That's not classic rock. So that's kind of what threw me for a loop with this one.
So we're going to bring things back to being full circle like we talked about. You collect the way you collect.
Absolutely.
All right, you organize them however.
Music is different for everybody.
Yeah. So Iola's Walk Through the Fire, which was the pick that I gave Aaron recently for him to review.
And this one didn't shock me in the slightest.
Yes, and that's also one of my wife's favorite. Oasis, What's the Story of Morning Glory, and the Black Pumas, Black Pumas.
Such a good album.
Such a good album.
Aaron,
what do you got?
All right. So for me, with our lists, you're definitely going to see quite a different variety on my list, I would say.
I agree.
So we'll start from the bottom up. I've got Ziggy Marley's self-titled album. That was one that I picked up kind of on a whim, and it is a lot of fun.
From Armando, from the Second Chance Auction Group.
I've also got the Black Pumas, which is a James pick for me, and I was very pleasantly surprised about that.
A must-own, in my opinion.
I agree. I've got Dr. Dre's The Chronic, first album I bought for the table.
Literally, we were at the record store, and I said to Aaron, you can buy one record today.
And that's the only time I ever bought one record. I've got Six Paradise Theater.
Great album.
This one kind of sat with me for a little bit. I didn't know if I should put Grand Illusion or Paradise Theater in there, but I chose
that. A tough choice.
I've got Eagles Hotel California, J.D. McPherson's Undivided Heart and Soul, another James pick for me, NWA Straight Outta Compton, Ozzy Osbourne Blizzard of Oz.
And I would say Ozzy Osbourne Blizzard of Oz, given your preference for music, is absolutely something that I was a little surprised that made it to your top 10. But I agree with you, that was an amazing album. And if I was going to do a top 20, that would definitely be on my top 20.
I played it again last night, and it still holds up for sure. Then I've got Poison's Look What the Cat Dragged In, which James just picked up a reissue version of that.
A little pricey for a single album. From the 80s, I paid like $32 for it.
It's totally worth it.
Classic album, but I think Poison was looking for some money that day.
And they got it.
Brett Michaels, if you're listening to us, I see what you're doing there.
Yeah, right. It worked too.
Because we know Brett Michaels listens to us.
Dude, I hope so. The last one I've got is my quirky pick. DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. He's the DJ, I'm the rapper.
Yes, and I will say my honorary mention that would never leave my collection would be my mix record that my wife made for me called Main Squeeze Magic.
Main Squeeze Magic.
Yep, hand-drawn picture of maybe I'll throw it up on the Facebook page. Just a reminder, just one more record on Facebook. Just one more record podcast, and just one more record podcast on Twitter as well. Please feel free to follow us. Please feel free to send us emails. Oh, yeah. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear what you're listening to.
My honorable mention is Zac Brown Band's The Owl. And part of that for me is because it's on brown and yellow splattered vinyl,
which is pretty.
It's amazing.
Not a huge modern country guy. We have Zac Brown Band's Greatest Hits, which admittedly I did catch my feet tapping a few times.
Oh yeah,
on that.
They're good.
They got some good music, and I can't begrudge them that.
All right, so what do we got next?
Well, that's going to be some reviews. You want me to go first? You want to go first?
I can go first.
Let's do it. What did I get you? At the Antique Mall.
Among other things, James got Tommy Bolin's Teaser for me at the Antique Mall. Again, it's an album I knew nothing about, an artist I knew nothing about.
I want to take a minute and talk about that for a second. So prior to Aaron and I starting this podcast, when we were just talking about it, I actually went to this Antique Mall and I saw this album, this exact copy. And that album was kind of the origin of the idea for this segment.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And the one thing James told me after I reviewed Yola was that the next album he got for me would be one with shredding guitars. And this one did not disappoint at all in the slightest. So I did a little research to learn who Tommy was since I knew nothing about him. I looked at what other bands he was also in. So he was the guitarist for at least two pretty well-known bands. Deep Purple is one. So he's the guy responsible for the Smoke on the Water riff.
Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah, it's pretty hard to miss that one. And then he also played for Zephyr, which I don't really know that group all that much.
I don't know them that well either, but they're on my list of bands to look into.
Right. And it sounds like they were pretty common back in their, or pretty well known back in their day.
I also sent Aaron some articles about Tommy Bolin's life at this point and kind of talked about the landscape of guitar at that point. And a lot of people were heavily inspired by Tommy at that point. One of which being Joe Walsh, later of the Eagles fame and James Gang. He was very influential and probably doesn't get enough credit.
Yeah. So the other thing James told me was that he died of an overdose at a very young age, which is way too common for young artists still even today. So
yeah,
there's a little background on him. Teaser was his first solo album, his debut as a solo artist, released in 1975. And when James first showed me the album cover, I couldn't tell who it was, and I admittedly thought it was a woman on the cover, just because, you know, that's the era that we were
long flowing hair, big dangly earrings.
I mean, I didn't mean this to offend anyone, but just to point out, you know, what we were looking at, the big hair and all that kind of stuff. So diving right into the album, you're greeted right away, the first song, by some pretty awesome guitar riffs, which I totally enjoyed. Second song starts the same way and then slows down to have more of a funk vibe to it, which I thought was really cool. But the guitar on that one still kills it. In fact, the second track is completely instrumental, I believe.
It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So after a few songs, I likened Tommy's guitar playing to that of what you would hear on a Santana album, specifically on the song Savannah Woman, which had a very similar feel to me as Black Magic Woman by Santana. The pseudo solos and in-your-face guitar is done very well. By the third song, you get a sort of Elton John or Billy Joel feel where he adds in the piano, but it's still rock and roll to me. This is yet another album from the era that sounds a ton better on vinyl than it does on Spotify, which I thought was really cool as well. The one song that blew me away was People, which is the first track on the B-side. He adds a saxophone to the mix here, and it even has a little reggae feel to it, and between the sax and the organ. I definitely did not expect to find a reggae-ish song on this album, and it was super cool to see. The only complaint I really have for this album when I listened to it on Spotify was that sometimes the guitar and the music would cover up the lyrics and pull you away from the song a bit. It's not necessarily the case when you listen to it on vinyl, because things are much better balanced that way. So James and I were talking not too long ago about how we each got each other albums from the 70s for this review, and they kind of embodied what music of that era was all about. Kind of points toward where music was headed as well. I could totally see how this album was a bit of a lead in to the hair metal days and big guitar days of what 80s rock really is all about. James also called Tommy Bolin a rock god at one point, and I can totally see that too. It got me thinking about who might also be considered rock gods, which would be a potential segment for episodes, down the road.
Yeah, that's something we're going to talk about in the future. We're discussing possibly talking about, maybe some of those iconic bands too that took a little too long to hang it up.
Yeah,
but
there's quite a few of them.
So it's just a teaser for future episodes.
So down to the nitty gritty. Would I have bought this album on my own? This specific one, probably not. But something like this, I could see myself buying. Will it make its way into my collection and rotation? Definitely yes. It already kind of has made its way into my regular rotation of albums that I play, and I can see myself playing it quite a bit more down the road.
Well, I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, it was a very good pick.
Good. So, as we've talked about in the past, I actually have quite a... I would say the 70s is really my era of choice for music. I'm not to say that I'm saying that I know everything there is to know about everything in the 70s, but that is my favorite era. So Aaron picked out Marshall Tucker Band for me, A New Life, released in 1974.
Which is one of my dad's favorite albums of all time.
Oh, I know you had it, but I didn't know that was one of your dad's favorites.
Yeah,
so
you can definitely tell that it was one of his most played.
So Jim, if you're listening, I'll try to do you a solid here. I won't rip this apart. All right. So admittedly, Marshall Tucker Band, obviously, definitely heard the name before. I'm sure if I sat down with their Spotify list, I probably would know some songs from there. Just not something I kind of gravitated towards in the past. When Aaron was talking about bands that, or about what the guitar work was like in the 70s, to me, people like Tommy Bolin represented like mid to late 70s and where the future of rock music was going.
For sure.
You know, given a broad stroke here of Marshall Tucker Band, I think Marshall Tucker was kind of what was the status quo at the time. This would be kind of like the safer route.
And I think Tommy Bolin and T-Rex are very kind of similar in where they were what music was kind of headed toward in the future.
Right. So this album was released on Capricorn Records, an independent label founded in 1969 by Phil Walden and Frank Fenter. These guys are credited with by historians as creating the Southern rock genre. This was the second album by the band. It was recorded in Macon, Georgia, and featured guest musicians on the album, including Charlie Daniels, and I'm going to butcher this because I don't know how to pronounce it, Jaimoe, Jaimoe, from the Allman Brothers Band. The album is considered to draw more heavily on the band's country influences. We still get some of the notes of blues and jazz that had been what they had become known for. So this was right at home for me, this album. This was definitely something Aaron picked, and that was a good choice for me. So despite the label being known for Southern rock, I would say Southern rock with this album is very mild. I don't hear a lot of it. The guitar work across the board is always sitting out in front. Like, it is always notable. It never just kind of like blends into the background. On track 2, we take kind of a laid back ride. Southern Woman is the name of that track. And I think it's just the epitome of what was great at the time. It was kind of like that arena rock for the time, where it's easy to sing along with. It's smooth, it's easy, it's breezy. As we are drawn in by the singer's soft musing about a love interest, a melodic bass line subtly carries us along the whole way. The guitar work kind of just keeps jumping out at you when you least expect it. It's not flashy, it's not over the top, it's just simple and skillful. Blue Ridge Mountain Skies allows for what I would assume Charlie Daniels' fiddle work to stop by for a visit. Like, it's not flying around the whole song. It's not overwhelming. It's again subtle. Everything in this album is subtle and doesn't overwhelm you. So speaking of Love for Your Home, kind of became a staple of the Southern rock genre, and this is kind of taking the early notes of that. One of the other tracks that jumped out at me was Another Cruel Lover, which is track 5. We hear a fair amount of guitar work. Tonally, it blends a little bit in better with the rest of the song. We get a little bit of horn work. Definitely felt like I could hear some jazz and soul infused in this song. So let's talk about what this album is and isn't. This is not a rock god album. If you're expecting Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Page, Clapton, you will be disappointed. It's not to say this guitar work isn't good. It's Tony Caldwell Jr., who was also the band's principal songwriter at this point, never disappoints. Doug Gray's vocals are spot on for the genre. He isn't especially gifted in his range department, nor does his voice have a unique sound. But he's exactly what it needs to be.
I think he does a good job of not trying to sound like something he isn't.
Right. He doesn't overdo it. He's
Right.
not forcing anything. He just kind of lets it happen.
Yep.
This album definitely is a great addition to my ever-expanding 70s area in my collection. It will probably make its way into my regular rotation. So if you're looking for an album that's consistent and well-made, I would definitely recommend Marshall Tucker's band's A New Life.
makes me happy that you like this one too.
I do. I absolutely do. This is.
I'm glad you enjoyed that one.
It's a good staple.
Yeah.
Staple for the collection.
All right. So let's get to the fun stuff.
Yes. So let's get to the fun stuff. Before we do that, so Aaron and I have been talking occasionally about band hate. So there are a couple bands that people like to just bash for no reason.
Yeah. Nickelback's definitely we gotta talk about that one.
Yeah, so admittedly I was a Nickelback hater. I mean, back in the day when they came out, I sang along with their songs. I listened to them. I enjoyed them. But then it became trendy and popular to hate on Nickelback.
And I'm surprised you were a Nickelback hater because you typically don't like when people shove pop culture at you.
Correct. And then we were watching this video, or I found it. It was a bonus video with Fred Savage and Ryan Reynolds from Deadpool for promoting this. I believe it was the second movie, where Fred Savage makes a joke about Nickelback, and Ryan Reynolds just lays into them about how successful they are and how many awards they've won and how well
countless Grammys.
And it got me thinking about it, and we talked about it, and I was like, they're not bad.
Yeah. I like Nickelback. I really do.
Right. And I got to a spot where I feel like I could maybe own some Nickelback.
They're not a group I think I would seek out to buy. Like if there was an RSD drop and it was a Nickelback album, I probably wouldn't buy it.
And I'd maybe buy Greatest Hits.
Right. I think they are a lot better than what people give them credit for.
I agree.
think a lot of the haters hated them because it was the cool thing to do is everybody hate on Nickelback.
And I assure you, you can keep posting all your memes because Nickelback's probably laughing all the way to the bank.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And another one that kind of came to mind, which Aaron isn't listened to them a whole lot, is Greta Van Fleet. They're kind of the popular ones for people to bash right now. And I got my first Greta Van Fleet album. And when I was listening to it, and people kept saying stuff like they're a Led Zeppelin knockoff, they're a Led Zeppelin knockoff. What did you think when I showed you their picture?
So, the picture, they look like they're trying to be an 80s rock band to me.
To me, it looked more 70s because they're wearing a lot of leather. They got shaggy hair.
I'll give you that. Yeah, late 70s, early 80s kind of thing.
Kind of like a Steppenwolf to me is what they look like.
Yeah. And then I listened to that song, and I don't remember the name of it.
It was first track off their first album. I don't recall the name of it either.
And, the one thing James said is a lot of people consider them as kind of a Led Zeppelin knockoff. And I admittedly don't know a ton of Led Zeppelin either.
Which we're going to fix.
Yes. So I listened to a good chunk of that song, the Greta Van Fleet song, and then I listened to intros of popular Led Zeppelin songs. And I can kind of see where people get that vibe from them.
Bottom line, music is like a circle. Right. Somebody's always influencing someone. Someone's always inspiring someone. So what I'm saying to you is they're not straight up copying anyone, but they're inspired by these bands that most of us all love, and I think we need to give them some slack.
Well, and you look at an album like Van Weezer, where a lot of those songs sound like classic rock songs.
But nobody gives them crap.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, if you're bashing Greta Van Fleet, be nice. All of their stuff doesn't sound like Led Zeppelin. Sure, some of it does, but it's not a copy. I think it's more of an homage. They're inspired. They're allowed to be inspired by somebody.
And if you're going to bash anybody, bash T Swift.
Nope. Taylor Swift, Red. I'm proud owner.
I don't judge anybody's musical taste.
Yeah.
Except for Lizzo.
Yeah, Chelsea is wanting to berate Aaron right now about Lizzo.
That's okay.
I love me some Lizzo.
Well, we're not going to get into it. This isn't a Lizzo podcast.
Well, she wants to come on the show. We would gladly invite Lizzo to the show.
Yeah, Lizzo listens to us. All right. So the truly fun stuff.
The really, really good stuff here.
So, Aaron, this is your first time shopping Record Store Day as a customer.
First time buying on Record Store Day. Second time attending a Record Store Day.
Tell me about the vibe. What was it like?
So we got up at 3:30 this morning.
Was at Aaron's house at 3:30.
Got to the store about 3:45, somewhere in there. Store opened at 7.
There are 3 people in line in front of us.
I think we were in the car done shopping at 10 after 7, somewhere in there.
Smooth and efficient.
It was fun. You could tell that everybody there was there to have fun, to enjoy the music. Everybody was talking about, what they were looking for, what their top wants kind of were, and everybody was a little careful about who they were sharing stuff with, understandably so, because there's limited copies available.
Until the end, when we all started being friends.
Right. So that was fun. The last 10 minutes, 20 minutes, everybody was standing up. Everybody's ready to go. You can get the sweaty palm feeling. The last look of what your album covers look like, so you don't miss them.
The fear that you're going to miss that one album that you care about.
Yeah.
And we did, unfortunately, one of the nice guys we were talking to didn't end up getting one of his, he didn't get the Kenny Loggins at the movies that he wanted.
And he was pretty bummed about that.
His name's Brandon. So Brandon, if you find their podcast, buddy, we're sorry
we feel for you.
We feel for you.
Yeah, I felt pretty bad about that one.
Yeah, it's just a good dude.
But, when they let us in, everybody kind of followed the line. Everybody there.
No pushing, no shoving, but a lot of fast walking.
Was a record store day veteran, if you say. And they have all the new stuff lined up against the wall. Somebody made the comment about how it is in alphabetical order, which I didn't know, which actually really helped me out quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I picked up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I had 6 in my hand.
Aaron was able to grab one for me that I missed on the first walkthrough.
Yep. It was easy enough to miss. James has the cover right in front of him.
Which we'll talk about my buys here.
It didn't really jump out. So,
but big shout out to Aaron, because there was a guy that was in line behind him that was a nice young man that also likes rap music.
I
like
got
Aaron.
to talking to him for probably the last hour before we went in.
Yes, and one of the things he wanted was both Lupe Fiascos.
There were 2 Lupe Fiasco drops. One was House, which is an EP, and then one was a double album, the Food and Liquor series.
He only got 2 copies.
Yeah, they had 2 copies of each one, I think. Yeah.
And Aaron, and when they were talking, Aaron's like, "Hey, did you get it?" And he's like, "No." Aaron's
I had it in my hand.
And Aaron gave it to him.
Yeah, it wasn't one of my super big wants, and I knew he wanted it more than I did and would listen to it more than I would. So.
And Aaron said, "Just do it for somebody else someday."
Yeah, that's all I said was,
because that's
next record store day, just pass it on to somebody else.
Because that's what we're about. We're about including people, helping people, loving the hobby.
Absolutely.
So keep that in mind. Aaron, what did you buy?
All right, so I have 5 albums here. One of them that I was really, really looking forward to was the Notorious B.I.G. Duets, The Final Chapter. So for Record Store Day, this was released on red and black swirl vinyl, and it also includes a 7-inch with 2 bonus tracks. So this was limited to 10,000 copies worldwide. I want to say around 4,000 or 5,000 of them were released in the U.S. So they had quite a few of these actually at the store, which I was kind of surprised about. So I got that. I'm very excited for that one. This one I'm going to save till the end because that might be my favorite pickup.
Yeah, let's do that at the end. Let's pick our favorite pick from the collection.
I got a Styx Same Stardust EP. The sticker on here says it is on colored vinyl, but I don't know what color. So this is kind of one that interested me just because I like Styx. It's got live. It's got 2 new songs on it, and then it's got 5 live songs of kind of their classics. So I'm excited for that one as well. Everybody knows that I enjoy me some Linkin Park. And they released Meteora today, which is, I think, their follow-up album to Hybrid Theory.
I believe that was delayed from the Black Friday from last year.
Okay.
I think that's what somebody was saying.
I can see that. So this is on aqua blue colored vinyl. It's got Numb, Faint, Somewhere I Belong, and Breaking the Habit on there. So I picked that one up. This one was kind of an impromptu purchase. I actually listened to some Rage Against the Machine, the Battle for Los Angeles last night. I picked up Rage Against the Machine, the Battle of Mexico City, And I think, yep, this is a live album recorded in Mexico City, October 28th, 1999, released for the first time on vinyl. This is on green vinyl as well.
That should look sharp.
So one of the guys in front of us, Brandon, was actually talking about this album, and he said,
Aaron was initially like, I don't want to get this. I'm not going to get it. I don't like live albums.
They had a bunch of copies of it, and that was kind of why I didn't feel bad picking it up. If they would have only had 2 or 3 copies, I would have said, no, let somebody else have it. But since they had quite a big stack, I picked that up. Excited for that one. Give it a shot. I'm not typically a huge live album guy, but I've heard nothing but good reviews about that one, so that should be good. And then I broke one of my rules for vinyl collecting today. This is the last pickup I had. I don't typically buy singles, but today I got a double single. It's Jim Croce, You Don't Mess Around with Jim, from Photographs and Memories. It's got 2 songs on each side, 12-inch colored vinyl. It's got You Don't Mess Around with Jim, Operator, Photographs and Memories, and New York's Not My Home on it. I was very excited about that one. I thought this would be a hot want from a lot of people.
I thought about getting it.
In that group. And they had quite a few copies of that one as well, too. I almost walked right past it on my first
I might pick that up later when it's discounted.
Yeah. $16.99 for a single is not terrible.
No, absolutely not.
So those are my pickups.
All right, so on to my stay up. So Tommy Bolin, the teaser guy that we were just talking about, they have a Tommy Bolin Energy 2. This is the album I walked past. This comes from his estate of some unreleased content. It is listed as a full LP. One side features 4 songs. The other side features 1. The one on the second side is called Guitar Solo.
Yeah,
So
I'm excited to hear what that one is all about.
So my belief looking at this, I'm expecting this whole B-side to be one long guitar solo.
He's just going to shred for 6, 7, 8 minutes.
Yeah, so I'm a little excited about that. It is on orange vinyl. It's got to be for the price of it is. It was a little bit of a pricey album.
And James and I both I don't think we realized that was coming out on Record Store Day until like 2-3 days ago.
Correct.
When we rechecked the list.
And then I listened to that one that Aaron got on Spotify. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited about that, to give that guy some credit. Next one I got was Prince's The Truth. This is the first time this is released on vinyl. This, from my understanding, was a companion album released on CD to a different album in the 90s. It is listed on the front. It says Prince The Truth Raw Acoustic Guitar Charge Collection. So I listened to this on Spotify because I wasn't familiar with it. This is very, very different than what we've heard from Prince in the past. It is largely just like him and an acoustic guitar with a few effects in the background. It is very emotional sounding.
It's kind of cool to see an artist like that who is so talented kind of have that other side.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what that is. Next one is my single that I got. It is Ella Fitzgerald, Ella in Berlin. So these are essentially just 2 songs that were one version of Mac the Knife from 1960, one from 1962. Then on the other side, Summertime and from 60 and 62 separately. But what makes this record different is the recordings are placed parallel to each other, so depending on where the needle hits the record, you may actually hear one of 2 versions of the song. So it may be something that's just kind of, a flash in the pan, or it might actually be something that's really cool.
And I would say that that's something I'm really looking forward to listening to with my husband, is the fact that we could be listening to potentially something that's either really gimmicky or something that might be catching on as a trend moving here.
Yeah. So from what I read online, it really sounds like it's probably going to be very different than something we're used to, and they might be doing that in the future for other albums. I am a big Doors fan, so I absolutely picked up the 2 LP session of Morrison Hotel Sessions. So this is a bunch of alternate takes and side talk and so on from when they recorded this album. I knew that I was definitely going to be picking this album up, so I recently picked up a copy of the regular Morrison Hotel. These are individually numbered as well, and I have number 6032.
That's cool that it's numbered like that.
Yeah, gold numbering on the back. I am an absolute lover of soul. It's probably one of my favorite genres, but I don't normally like to buy greatest hits albums. So one of the things released today was Al Green's Give Me More Love, the orchestral greatest hits. So the original classic recordings of Memphis legend Al Green, accompanied by a full symphonic orchestra, a unique sonic landscape of soul music like no other. So this was like something where I was going to hear these songs again, but probably with a lot of oomph behind them, and it's pressed on pink vinyl.
I'm glad you saw that one, because when I went through, I don't think I even saw that one on this shelf.
There are maybe 4 copies. The last time there were only 2. Mm-hmm. So in 1968, Elton John scrapped an album called Regimental Sergeant Zippo. So let's be clear, this was probably, I would say, at the height of the Beatles' like psychedelic days. This is probably like the Sgt. Pepper kind of era, and this album never got released. And for the life of me, I had to know why. Apparently, a few years ago, he released the one song Regimental Sergeant Zippo, and I listened to it, and I'm like, this is great. So this was something that I had to get because I had to hear the rest of it, and I appreciate that era of music.
And you sent me the one song from that the other day, and it had a very Beatles sound to it, so I'm curious why it got scrapped.
Me too. And then the last selection, this was a bit of an impulse buy. I was watching an unboxing yesterday of...
As Chelsea's over here shaking her head at you.
She talked.
We don't talk money. We don't talk money when my husband goes to record store day or out with Aaron. He just like, look at my records, honey. And I'm like, don't tell me how much you spent as long as the lights stay on.
Don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah. I will be taking a break until next record store day for buying records.
I probably will as well.
So this was my impulse buy. It is Golden Gate Groove, The Sound of Philadelphia, live in San Francisco. So this is a collection of soul singers, including Don Cornelius, MFSB, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, the 3 Degrees, Bill Paul, the OJs, including songs like Love Train, which I love the OJs, and I just love soul in general. So when I saw this and heard about what it was, I was like, I had to. I love soul
you
too
had
much.
that one in your hand, and I kind of knew once you started looking at it that you were going to walk out with that one.
Right. So I think it was a good day. Other things I had considered buying was Beck's Hyperspace, but I listened to it and it just wasn't for me.
Yeah.
I know that album's very widely loved currently. Not my deal.
Yeah. The other thing that I kind of considered buying, so this record store day, the Crosley released a Beatles themed suitcase record player, and it looked like they had 2 at the store. I didn't see anybody buy one.
$150.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to go back and see if they're still there or not.
I'm sure somebody will pick them up, but
I think they're going to go for money online later.
Yeah.
I think that'll be something that'll get expensive later on, but I wouldn't use it. So.
Right. And James and I talked that, if either of us bought it, it would be more of a display piece.
Right. We're going to be doing some research on Crosley record players coming up just to kind of see if they've made any improvements over the years in the quality to see if they're better than they were or not.
And it sounds like they have, from what little research we
Record Store Day is a big supporter. It was supported partially by Crosley, so they're very much speak highly of Crosley.
And it sounds like they pick a new band sponsor every year or something along those lines to do a themed player for.
Correct.
So, $1 million question of your pickups today. What's going to be your first spin?
Can I guess what he's going to
Sure.
say? I think we're either going to be putting on his wild card at the last one. I forgot the names already. The Golden Gate Groove, or we're going to be putting Al Green on first. It's one of those two. That's what I'm thinking.
All right, so let's do Aaron's
So-
first. Then we'll build the suspense.
I guess we're kind of cheating because we already talked about this.
Aaron knows what.
I know
wasn't
the
listening.
Elton John is one that you were kind of super interested in.
I am very interested in Elton John,
and I think that's probably what you'll put on first.
Yeah, I think the Morris Hotel will be something I will listen to when I'm home alone, just because it's kind of a diehard thing.
My two guesses would have been either the Ella or the Elton.
I think probably the Elton.
Yeah.
Just because I'm so curious about what was wrong with it.
That was my next question: is what are you most looking forward to playing?
Oh, most looking forward to playing like probably actually say the Al Green.
Yeah.
Just because I want to hear those classic songs with that extra oomph behind them.
Yeah.
How about you, buddy?
I think so. There's two that kind of stand out to me. One is the Styx album, just because it's something new and I'm curious about that one. I think the first one I'm going to throw on is that Jim Croce one, though. So I was super excited.
You love you
about
some
that
Jim
one.
Croce.
I do. I've got a couple of his albums already, but this one was too good for me to pass up today.
All right. So, just a reminder, like we said earlier, please follow us on Just One More Record podcast on Facebook, Just One More Record podcast on Twitter. Send us an email at justonemorerecordpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to know what you're listening to. Tell us what you got from Record Store Day, what you're excited about. If you send us a nicely worded email, we'll probably read it on the podcast.
Even if you send us a not so nicely worded email, we'll probably read it in private anyway.
Yeah, and then we'll probably make fun of you.
Give us a follow on Spotify too, if you guys don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. We're on Spotify. Apple is giving us some grief and not being particularly supportive about us getting on their platform, but hopefully that will change soon. So now that we've eaten, my wife and I are going to go home. I'm going to take a shower because I feel gross.
Take a nap.
Chelsea's probably going to take a nap. I'm loaded up on caffeine, man. I'm good for a few hours.
I already took a nap. I took a car nap for about 25 minutes.
Yeah, Chelsea
while
stayed
they were
in the car while we went inside. So
I was
that
up
worked out.
early. I waited with them for the first couple of hours, chatted it up, but I was out of town for a couple of days, so I really had to just get a little bit of rest in before we tackled the day.
Yeah,
So
she's
Understandably so.
got a new job too. So again, thank you, and
There's always more vinyl.